So, that was how it worked. As easy as that, there she was in a strange city where she knew no one. But what had been a torment to her yesterday, today gave her a tremendous sense of freedom, because she didn't need to explain herself to anyone. She decided that for the first time in many years, she would devote the entire day to thinking about herself. Up until then, she had always been preoccupied with what other people were thinking. Her mother, her school friends, her father, the people at the model agencies, the French school teacher, the waiter, the librarian, complete strangers in the street. In fact, no one was thinking anything, certainly not about her, a poor foreigner who, if she disappeared tomorrow, wouldn't even be missed by the police. Fine. She went out early, had breakfast in her usual cafe, went for a stroll around the lake, and saw a demonstration held by refugees. A woman out walking a small dog told her that they were Kurds. Maria, instead of pretending that she knew the answer in order to prove that she was more cultivated and intelligent than people might think, asked, "Where do Kurds come from?" To her surprise, the woman didn't know. That's what the world is like. People talk as if they knew everything. But if you dare to ask a question, they don't know anything. She went into an internet cafe and discovered that the Kurds came from Kurdistan, a non-existent country now divided between Turkey and Iraq. She went back to the lake in search of the woman and her dog, but she had gone, possibly because the dog had got fed up after half an hour of staring at a group of human beings with banners, headscarves, music, and strange cries. I'm just like that woman, really? Or rather, that's what I used to be like. Someone pretending to know everything, hidden away in my own silence, until that Arab guy got on my nerves. And I finally had the courage to say that the only thing I knew was how to tell the difference between two soft drinks. Was he shocked? Did he change his mind about me? Of course not. He must have been amazed at my honesty. Whenever I try to appear more intelligent than I am, I always lose out. Well, enough is enough. She thought of the model agency. Did they know what the Arab guy really wanted? In which case she had yet again been taken for a fool, or had they genuinely thought he was going to find work for her in his country? Whatever the truth of the matter, Maria felt less alone on that grey morning in Geneva, with the temperature close to zero, the Kurds demonstrating, the trams arriving punctually at each stop, the shops setting out their jewellery in the windows again, the banks opening, the beggars sleeping, the Swiss going to work. She was less alone because by her side was another woman, invisible perhaps to passer-by. She had never noticed her presence before, but there she was. She smiled at the invisible woman beside her who looked like the Virgin Mary, Jesus' mother. The woman smiled back and told her to be careful. Things were not as simple as she imagined. Maria ignored the advice and replied that she was a grown-up, responsible for her own decisions, and she couldn't believe that there was some cosmic conspiracy being hatched against her. She had learned that there were people prepared to pay 1,000 Swiss francs for one night, for half an hour between her legs. and all she had to decide over the next few days was whether to take her 1,000 Swiss francs and buy a plane ticket back to the town where she had been born, or stay a little longer and earn enough to be able to buy her parents a house, some lovely clothes for herself, and tickets to all the places where she had dreamed of visiting one day. The invisible woman at her side said again that the things were not that simple. But Maria, although glad of this unexpected company, asked her not to interrupt her thoughts because she needed to make some important decisions. She began to analyze, more carefully this time, the possibility of going back to Brazil. Her school friends, who had never left the town they were born in, would all say that she had been fired from the job, that she had never had the talent to be an international star. Her mother would be said never to have received her promised monthly sum of money, although Maria in her letters had assured her that the post office must be stealing it. Her father would, forever after, look at her with that "I told you so" expression on his face. She would go back to working in the shop selling fabrics, and she would marry the owner. She who had travelled in a plane, eaten Swiss cheese, learned French, and walked in the snow. On the other hand, there were those drinks that had earned her 1,000 Swiss francs. It might not last very long, after all. Beauty changes as swiftly as the wind, but in a year she could earn enough money to get back on her feet and return to the world, this time on her own terms. The only real problem was that she didn't know what to do, how to start. She remembered from her days at the family nightclub where she had first worked that a girl had mentioned somewhere called Rue de Berne. In fact, it had been one of the first things she had said, even before she had shown her where to put her suitcases. She went over to one of the large panels that can be found everywhere in Geneva, that most tourist-friendly of cities which cannot bear to see tourists getting lost. For this reason, the panels have advertisements on one side and maps on the other. A man was standing there, and she asked him if he knew where Rue de Berne was. He looked at her, intrigued, and asked if it was the street she was looking for or the road that went to Bern, the capital of Switzerland. "No," said Maria. "I want the street in Geneva." The man looked her up and down, then walked off without a word, convinced that he was being filmed by one of those TV programs that delight in making fools of people. Maria studied the map for 15 minutes. It's not a very big city, and finally found the place she was looking for. Her invisible friend, who had remained silent while she was studying the map, was now trying to reason with her. It wasn't a question of morality, but of setting off down a road of no return. Maria said that if she could earn enough money to go back home, then she could earn enough to get out of any situation. Besides, none of the people she passed had actually chosen her what they wanted to do. That was just a fact of life. "We live in a vale of tears," she said to her invisible friend. "We can have all the dreams we like, but life is hard, implacable, sad." "What are you trying to say? That people will condemn me?" "No one will ever know. This is just one phase of my life." With a sad, sweet smile, The invisible friend disappeared. Maria went to the fun fair and bought a ticket for the roller coaster. She screamed along with everyone else, knowing that there was no real danger and that it was all just a game. She ate in a Japanese restaurant, even though she didn't understand quite what she was eating, knowing only that it was very expensive and feeling in a mood to indulge herself in every luxury. She was happy. She didn't need to wait for a phone call now or to watch every centime she spent. Later that day, she left a message with the agency to thank them and to tell them that the meeting had gone well. If they were genuine, they would ask about the photos. If they were procurers of women, they would arrange more meetings. She walked across the bridge back to her little room and decided that, however much money and however many future plans she had, she would definitely not buy a television. She needed to think, to use all her time for thinking. From Maria's diary that night, with a note in the margin saying, "Not sure." I have discovered the reason why a man pays for a woman. He wants to be happy. He wouldn't pay 1,000 francs just to have an orgasm. He wants to be happy. I do too. Everyone does. And yet no one is. What have I got to lose if, for a while, I decide to become a... It's a difficult word to think or even write, but let's just be blunt. What have I got to lose if I decide to become a prostitute for a while? Honor, dignity, self-respect. Although, when I think about it, I've never had any of those things. I didn't ask to be born. I've never found anyone to love me. I've always made the wrong decisions. Now, I'm letting life decide for me. The agency phoned the next day and asked about the photos, and when the fashion show was being held, since they got a percentage of every job. Maria, realizing that they knew nothing about what had happened, told them that the Arab gentleman would be in touch with them. She went to the library and asked for some books about sex. If she was seriously considering the possibility of working just for a year, she had told herself, in an area about which she knew nothing, the first thing she needed to know was how to behave, how to give pleasure and receive money in return. She was most disappointed when the librarian told her that since the library was a government-funded institution, they only had a few technical works. Maria read the index of one of these books and immediately returned it. They said nothing about happiness. They talked only about dull things such as erection, penetration, impotence, precautions, blah blah blah. She did for a moment considered borrowing the psychology of frigidity in women, since, in her own case, although she was very much enjoying being possessed and penetrated by a man, she only ever reached orgasm through masturbation. She wasn't there in search of pleasure, however, but work. She thanked the librarian and went to a shop where she made her first investment in that possible career looming on the horizon. Clothes which she considered to be sexy enough to arouse men's desire. Then she went straight to the place she had found on the map, Rue de Bonne. At the top of the street was a church, oddly enough, very near the Japanese restaurant where she had had the supper last night. Then some shops selling cheap watches and clocks, and at the far end were the clubs she had heard about. All of them closed at that hour of the day. She went for another walk around the lake, then, without a tremor of embarrassment, bought 5 pornographic magazines in order to study the kind of things she would have to do. Waited for darkness to fall, and then went back to Rue de Berne. There she chose at random a bar with the alluring Brazilian name of Copacabana. She hadn't decided anything. She told herself it was just an experiment. She hadn't felt so well or so free in all the time she had been in Switzerland. "I'm looking for work," she told the owner, who was washing glasses behind the bar. The place consisted of a series of tables, a few sofas around the walls, and in one corner a kind of dance floor. "Nothing doing. If you want to work here legally, you have to have a work permit." Maria showed him hers, and the man's mood seemed to improve. "Got any experience?" She didn't know what to say. If she said yes, he would ask her where she had worked before. If she said no, he might turn her down. "I'm writing a book." The idea had come out of nowhere, as if an invisible voice had come to her aid. She saw that the man knew she was lying, but was pretending to believe her. "Before you make any decision, talk to some of the other girls. We get at least 6 Brazilian women in every night. That way you can find out exactly what to expect." Maria was about to say that she didn't need any advice from anyone, and that besides she hadn't come to a decision just yet. But the man had already moved off to the other side of the bar, leaving her on her own, without even a glass of water to drink. The women started to arrive, and the owner called over some of the Brazilians and asked them to talk to the new arrival. None of them seemed very willing. Fear of competition, Maria assumed. The sound system was turned on and a few Brazilian songs were played. Well, the place was called Copacabana. Then some Asiatic-looking women came in along with others who seemed to have come straight from the snowy, romantic mountains around Geneva. She had been standing there for only 2 hours with nothing to drink and just a few cigarettes, fueled by a growing sense that she was definitely making the wrong decision. The words, "What am I doing here?" kept repeating over and over in her head, and feeling increasingly irritated by the complete lack of interest on the part of both the owner and the other girl. When, finally, one of the Brazilian girls came over to her. "What made you choose this place?" Maria could have resorted to that story about writing a book, or she could, as she had with the Kurds, with the Maro, and with Fellini, simply tell the truth. "To be perfectly honest, I don't know where to start, or if I want to start." The other woman seemed surprised by such a frank, direct answer. She took a sip of what looked like whiskey, listened to the Brazilian song they were playing, made some comment about missing her home, then said that there wouldn't be many customers that night because a big international conference being held near Geneva had been cancelled. In the end, when she saw that Maria still hadn't left, she said, "Look, it's very simple. You just have to stick to 3 basic rules. First, never fall in love with anyone you work with or have sex with. Second, don't believe any promises and always get paid up front. Third, don't use drugs. There was a pause. And start now. If you go home tonight without having got your first client, you'll have second thoughts about it and you won't have the courage to come back. Maria had gone there more for a consultation to get some feedback on her chances of finding a temporary job. She found herself confronted by the feeling that so often pushes people into making hasty decisions: despair. All right, start tonight. She didn't mention that she had, in fact, started yesterday. The woman went up to the owner, whom she called Milan, and he came over to talk to Maria. Have you got nice underwear on? No one. Her boyfriends, the Arab, her girlfriends, far less a stranger, had ever asked her that question. But that was what life was like in that place. Straight to the point. I'm wearing pale blue pants and no bra, she added provocatively, but all she got was a reprimand. Tomorrow, wear black pants, bra, and stockings. Taking off your clothes is all part of the ritual. Without more ado, and on the assumption now that he was talking to someone who was about to start work, Milan introduced her to the rest of the ritual. The Copacabana should be a pleasant place to spend time, not a brothel. The man came into that bar wanting to believe that they would find a lady on her own. If anyone came over to her table and wasn't intercepted en route because some clients were exclusive to certain girls, he would probably say, "Would you like a drink?" To which Maria could say yes or no. She was free to choose the company she kept, although it wasn't advisable to say no more than once a night. If she answered in the affirmative, she should ask for a fruit juice cocktail, which just happened to be the most expensive drink on the drinks list. Absolutely no alcohol, or letting the customer choose for her. Then, she should accept any invitation to dance. Most of the clientele were familiar faces and, apart from the special clients, about whom he did not go into any further detail, none of them represented any danger. The police and the Department of Health demanded monthly blood samples to check that they were not carrying any sexually transmitted diseases. The use of condoms was obligatory, although there was no way of checking if this rule was or wasn't being followed. She should never, on any account, cause any kind of scandal. Milan was a respectable married man, concerned for his reputation and the good name of his club. He continued explaining the ritual. After dancing, they would return to the table, and the customer, as if he were saying something highly original, would invite her to go back to his hotel with him. The normal price was 350 francs, of which 50 francs went to Milan for the hire of the table, a trick to avoid any future legal complications and accusations of exploiting sex for financial gain. Maria tried to say, "But I earned 1,000 francs for—" The owner made as if to move off, but the other Brazilian woman, who was listening into the conversation, said, "She's just joking." And turning to Maria, she said in clear, loud Portuguese, "This is the most expensive place in Geneva. Never do that again. He knows what the going rate is, and he knows that no one pays 1,000 francs to go to bed with anyone. except, of course, the special clients, but only if you get lucky and you have the right qualifications. Milan's eyes. Later, Maria found out that he was a Yugoslav who had been living there for 20 years. Left no room for doubt. The price is 350 francs. Right, said a humbled Maria. First, he had asked about the color of her underwear. Now he was deciding how much her body was worth. But she had no time to think. The man was still issuing instructions. She must never accept invitations to anyone's house or to a hotel that had less than 5 stars. If the client had nowhere to take her, she was to go to a hotel located 5 blocks from there, and should always take a taxi so that the woman who worked in other clubs in Rue de Bonne didn't get to know her face. Maria didn't believe this last reason. She thought that the real reason was that she might get an offer of better working conditions in another club. She kept her thoughts to herself. However, arguing about the price was a bad enough idea. I say this again. Just like policemen in the movies never drink while on duty. I'll leave you now. It will start getting busy soon. Say thank you, said the other Brazilian woman in Portuguese. Maria thanked him. The man smiled, but he had not yet finished his list of recommendations. I forgot something. The time between ordering a drink and leaving the club should never, under any circumstances, exceed 45 minutes. And in Switzerland, with clocks all over the place, even Yugoslavs and Brazilians must learn to be punctual. Just remember, I'm feeding my children on your commission. She would remember. He gave her a glass of sparkling mineral water with a slice of lemon in it, a drink that could easily pass for a gin and tonic, and asked her to wait. Gradually, the club began to fill up. Men came in, looked around, sat down on their own, and immediately one of the women would go over to them, as if they were at a party where everyone has known each other for ages, and as if they were just taking time out to have a little fun after a hard day at work. Every time a man found a partner, Maria gave a sigh of relief, even though she was now feeling much more comfortable. Perhaps it was because it was Switzerland. Perhaps it was because sooner or later she would find adventure, money, or a husband, as she had always dreamed she would. Perhaps she suddenly realized it was because it was the first time in many weeks that she had been out at night and to a place where there was music playing and where she could now and then hear someone speaking Portuguese. She was having fun with the other girls around her, laughing, drinking fruit juice cocktails, talking brightly. None of them had come up to her to say hello or to wish her success in her new profession. But that was perfectly normal. After all, she was a rival, a competitor, competing for the same trophy. Instead of feeling depressed, she felt proud. She was fighting for herself. She wasn't some helpless person. She could, if she wanted to, open the door and leave that place for good. But she would always know that she had at least had the courage to come to that far, to negotiate and discuss things about which she had never in her life even dared to think. She wasn't a victim of fate. She kept telling herself she was running her own risk, pushing beyond her own limits, experiencing things which one day in the silence of her heart, in the tedium of old age, she would remember almost with nostalgia, however absurd that might seem. She was sure that no one would approach her, and tomorrow it would all seem like some mad dream that she would never dare to repeat. For she had just realized that being paid 1,000 francs for one night only happens once. Perhaps she would be better off buying a plane ticket back to Brazil. To make the time pass more quickly, she began to work out how much each of the girls would earn if they went out 3 times a night. They would earn for every 4 hours of work the equivalent of what it would have taken her 2 months to earn at the shop. Was that a lot? She had earned 1,000 francs for one night, but perhaps that had just been beginner's luck. At any rate, an ordinary prostitute could earn more, much more than she would ever earn teaching French back at home. And all they had to do was spend some time in a bar, standing, dancing, spread their legs, and that was that. They didn't even have to talk. Money was one motivation, she thought. But was that all? Or did the people there, the customers and the women, also enjoy themselves in some way? Was the world so very different from that what she had been taught in school? If you used a condom, there was no risk, nor was there any risk of being recognized by anyone. The only people who visit Geneva, she had been told once in her French class, were people who liked going to banks. The majority of Brazilians, however, enjoy shopping, preferably in Miami or in Paris. 300 Swiss francs a day, 5 days a week, a fortune. Why did those women keep working there when they could earn enough in a month to go back home and buy a new house for their mother? Or had they only been working there a short time? Or had Maria felt afraid of her own question? Did they enjoy it? Again, she wished she could have a proper drink. The champagne had helped a lot the previous night. Would you like a drink? Before her stood a man in his 30s wearing the uniform of some airline. The world went into slow motion, and Maria had a sense of stepping out of her own body and observing herself from the outside. Deeply embarrassed, but struggling to control her blushes, she nodded and smiled, knowing that from that moment on her life had changed forever. A fruit juice cocktail, a bit of talk. What are you doing here? It's cold, isn't it? I like this music. Oh, I prefer ABBA myself. The Swiss are a chilly lot. Are you from Brazil? Tell me about your country. Well, there's a carnival. You Brazilian women are really pretty, you know. Smile and accept the compliment, perhaps with a slightly shy look. Back to the dance floor, but all the time keeping an eye on Milan, who sometimes scratches his head and taps on his wristwatch. The smell of the man's cologne, she realizes quickly that she will have to get used to all kinds of smells. At least this is a perfume. They dance very close. Another fruit juice cocktail. Time is passing. Didn't Milan say 45 minutes maximum? She looks at her watch. He asks if she's expecting someone. She says a few friends of hers will be arriving in an hour. He invites her back to his hotel. Hotel room, 350 francs. A shower after sex. Intrigued, the man remarked that no one had ever done that before. It's not Maria. It's some other person who's inside her, who feels nothing, who mechanically goes through the motions of a ritual. She's an actress. Milan has taught her everything. even how to say goodbye to the client. She thanks him. He too feels awkward and sleepy. She doesn't want to go back to the club. She wants to go home. But she has to go back to hand over the 50 francs. And then there's another man, another cocktail, more questions about Brazil, a hotel, another shower. This time no comment. Back to the bar where the owner takes his commission and tells her she can go. There aren't many customers tonight. She doesn't get a taxi. She walks the length of Rue de Bonne, looking at the other clubs, at the shop windows full of clocks and watches, at the church on the corner, closed, always closed. As usual, no one looks at her. She walks through the cold. She isn't aware of the freezing temperatures. She doesn't cry. She doesn't think about the money she had earned. She is in a kind of trance. Some people were born to face life alone, and this is neither good nor bad. It is simply life. Maria is one of those people. She begins to try and think about what has happened. She only started work today, and yet she already considers herself a professional. It's as if she started ages ago, as if she had done this all her life. She experiences a strange sense of pride. She is glad she didn't run away. Now she just has to decide whether or not to carry on. If she does carry on, then she will make sure she's the best. Something she has never been before. But life was teaching her, very fast, that only the strong survive. To be strong, she must be the best. There is no alternative. From Maria's diary a week later. I'm not a body with a soul. I'm a soul that has a visible part called the body. All this week, contrary to what one might expect, I have been more conscious of the presence of this soul than usual. It didn't say anything to me, didn't criticize me or feel sorry for me. It merely watched me. Today, I realized why this was happening. It's been such a long time since I thought about love or anything called love. It seems to be running away from me, as if it wasn't important anymore and didn't feel welcome. But if I don't think about love, I'll be nothing. When I went back to the Copacabana the second night, I was treated with much more respect. Apparently, a lot of girls do it for one night, but can't bear to go on. Anyone who does becomes a kind of ally, a colleague, because she can understand the difficulties and the reasons, or rather the absence of reasons for having chosen this kind of love, this kind of life. They all dream of someone who will come along and see in them a real woman, companion, lover, friend. But they all know from the very first moment of each new encounter that this simply isn't going to happen. I need to write about love. I need to think and write about love. Otherwise, my soul won't survive.